Hello, everybody. Thank you, Camille. Well, I would like to start by saying that I think setting up this webinar is a perfect example of active citizenship because, I mean, it's amazing how many people we are coming here together. And as I'm understanding, we have Mathilde, who's based in Colombia. We have many of you all over Europe. Myself, I am based in Indonesia, so really, well, congratulations to IECAH for setting it up, and thank you for bringing us all together. Okay, so I would like to maybe to start well by welcoming all of you. So very much welcome. I'm very glad also to have this opportunity to sort of put a voice to some of us. I'm very glad to see some of the participants in the EUA Volunteers Initiative course that we just completed. Some others from the different organizations that have been very supportive, from Alianza por la Solidaridad, etc., who've been very active in the debates. So, well, I think it's a great opportunity to come all together. And in fact, the idea of this webinar, as Camille and the rest of the colleagues have communicated to you, is to take advantage to sort of, after some of you have participated in the course, some others have not, but are very much aware of the initiative and willing to participate, or with experience already having participated. We have the luxury to have people like Erika Bozzato from Italy, who was one of the volunteers and one of the pilots. I'm not very sure we have George Apostu just yet with us, and was another volunteer, and Maria Chiara from GBC, a sending organization. But anyway, it's a very rich group, and the idea, I think, is going a little bit from the theory that we've been seeing through the course, and also some of the main features that the initiative established, to go from there to a little bit the practice, and to see in reality how through the pilots the initiative has worked, what has been some of the challenges in reality, and how easy, not easy, interesting, not interesting, is really to put in place this initiative, taking advantage of the participation of the different actors who've been very much involved from the beginning. So not to go much further than that, let me explain to you a little bit what we are going to do. We are going to start going through a presentation to sort of reframe a little bit the initiative. As you will see, those who participated in the course, you will recall lesson 1 and some, again, of the features, some of the main objectives, the initiative, what was the positive elements that brings to the different actors. And then from there, I would like to raise in some questions for the debate, to give the floor to our resource participants, Erika, Mathilde, Maria, if it's around, and George, or any other who been sending organization who would like to participate, to so let us know a little bit in the reality, how did they experience the initiative. And then from there, we can open the debate to everybody else, either to sort of ask questions or clarifications, or to give your views from those of you who have participated in the course, from what you've learned, and how do you see them, that in the future you could participate in it, or asking questions to the resource colleagues as well, so that, again, we can see once more in reality how the initiative is implemented. Okay, so with that in mind, we are going to start a little bit with the presentation, and maybe the starting point is to go back a little bit to the history of the initiative. You know, as you know, the initiative started in 2010, and it's been sort of a long process, quite intensive process of a consultative initial stage, a lot of analysis, an impact assessment, and different stages, all supported by official communications with the European Commission. until 2014, when the European Parliament voted in favor of the legislation that created the EU aid volunteers. Since 2011 until 2014, it was a period of pilots, and the pilots, I'm sure that Erika, maybe Cristina Simon, Mathilde, others, you can sort of give us more details. But in my understanding, those years were the pilots were being conducted, and at the same time there was all sorts of activities with debriefing and sort of sharing lessons learned and experiences and challenges that at the same time were sort of reframing and adapting the initiative before it was somehow launched last year in 2015. Why a European Union aid volunteers initiative? Well, as those of you who participated in the course have reflected on, in the last probably we can say 10, 15 years, we can see an increasing number of natural and man-made disasters in the world. And how these ones are happening, the scale and the frequency of these humanitarian emergencies is definitely on the rise. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, up to now or up to recent years, the focus of the humanitarian response is being very much responsive, if I can say. It's been very much on trying to respond when the hazards happen. And there's been a big mobilization of funds on one side, the European Commission itself, through IECAH, etc., civil society organizations, but it's been mostly reactive rather than proactive. So the idea is to try to focus at the moment more efforts in preventing the hazards before becoming disasters, and actually supporting communities to prepare and to learn or to improve strategies to manage the risks. So for that purpose, there is a need to have more trained and well-prepared people that can support and organizations and the communities for that purpose. So let's look a little bit with that in mind at some of the operational objectives of the initiative. As I was saying now, one of them is definitely increasing the capacity of the European Union to provide humanitarian aid. Another key objective is helping to improve or strengthen, if we can say, the skills, the knowledge and the competencies of the volunteers. And not only that, but also improving the conditions under which they are working, the volunteers. Another important objective is to build the capacity, or in many cases, and probably this is something also that we can later on discuss, more than build the capacities, strengthening the capacity, supporting the capacity of hosting organizations and foster volunteering in third countries. As we will see, there is hosting organizations with a lot of experiences in project management and in various different areas of the project management, but to which extent there is a great experience in managing or working with volunteers. So this is one of the aims or the objectives as well of the initiative, is try to bringing together different types of organizations, humanitarian organizations, other type of organizations, sending organizations in Europe, hosting organizations in third countries with different experiences, working or not working with volunteers, and bringing all that together. Another important objective, as you can see on the slide, is communicating the EU's humanitarian aid principles, agreed on the European consensus on humanitarian aid. And, you know, I think we should even go a step further, and more than communicating the European Union's humanitarian aid principles, which I would like to ask later on, probably Erika, how in your experience you sort of envisage that communication of the humanitarian aid principles. I would talk about implementing the principles, which are in fact the humanitarian principles that those of you who participated in the course and those of you who have received training or are already working in humanitarian aid know, no? Of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence. So it's not only about communicating the principles, but actually implementing. And this is why, again, I think it's interesting we discussed today to see a little bit, okay, how do we go from that communication and from these somehow big words that sort of set up the initiative to the actual reality of implementing the humanitarian aid principles. And finally, another important operational objective is basically disseminating the standards and procedures for management of volunteers by other volunteer schemes around Europe, and enhancing the coherence and the consistency on volunteering across the member states in the European Union. Continuing. So what does the initiative offer? It offers three main elements. The first one is preparedness. As I was mentioning before, for many years, really the humanitarian response, and particularly in the stage of relief, was really responsive. It was really the disaster happened, and at that moment we have a great capacity. And when I say we, I say the different actors that compose the humanitarian system, to sort of mobilize ourselves, go to the field, and cover the initial, second, and sort of third states of an emergency. But the question is, in terms of preparedness. Preparedness very often has been an underfunded area in humanitarian aid. And to which extent we did even know how to do preparedness. So this is one of the main focus of the initiative. In a way, the initiative comes to complement and support, and if you want, even strengthening already existing partnerships between European organizations and other organizations in third countries, because the idea definitely is strengthening the partnerships, the possibilities of the partnerships, but at the same time is supporting the already existing ones. Okay, so this is the fostering partnerships and mutual benefits for sending organizations and for hosting organizations in third countries. Coming back to the preparedness aspect, which I think is very important, and it sort of lies very much as one of the key issues of the initiative. To give you an idea, up to 75% of the missions where volunteers will participate until 2020 will focus on supporting communities to build resilience for disaster preparedness and risk management. So only 25% approximately of the missions will be devoted to other areas. If you remember, those of you who participated in the course, there was a question raised by our colleague Encarnación at some point in terms of the reasons why eventually there is such a focus on the missions looking at preparedness and risk management, etc., rather than other areas like logistics, administration, areas that are very much related to program or project management. And I think it was Cristina Simon, later on maybe Cristina, you can come back to that as well, who responded by saying that the European Union has definitely, and IECAH has identified that this is one of the areas that needs a lot of support and capacity building, while maybe the hosting organizations and even the communities and the countries where we finally work have other types of fundings, other types of projects, or even greater capacity in many cases in all of those areas. So really there is a specific needs for disaster preparedness mainly. And what does the initiative offer as well is the capacity building. So it's really investing in humanitarian organizations, and supporting those organizations that having very valuable and long experience in various areas of cooperation, and probably not so much specifically in humanitarian action as the European Union defines it, to sort of strengthen and learn and be able to make that step and get involved or more involved in humanitarian aid. What are some of the main features of the initiative? Probably one of the most important, if not the most important one, is the needs-based approach. Again, those of you who participated in the course, we had probably the longest discussion around needs-based. It was also one of the questions in one of the assignments, if you remember. And this is absolutely crucial, because the needs-based approach basically looks on the needs of the people affected. And not even that, but also going a little bit further and trying to identify those people that are that need the most help or the most support, regardless of any condition, nationality, religion, gender, etc. So what is interesting is that the needs-based approach is directly linked and is at the heart of the humanitarian principles, particularly humanity. If you remember the definition of the principle of humanity that we were saying, is that the human suffering must be alleviated wherever and whenever it occurs. And the principle of impartiality, for example, that according to the needs and without discrimination, we need to be there to assist the population. So really the needs-based approach is probably, I would say, one of the key features and probably the added value of this initiative, which is at the heart as well of the humanitarian assistance of the European Union as a whole. And as you've probably seen, those of you who have seen the different regulation of the European Union, is a recurrent element, coming back to the needs-based approach. Another main feature is the well-trained and prepared volunteers. So the idea is not to sort of base the initiative only on the goodwill and the previous experiences, even that, and very, very strong experience that might have volunteers, but to give additional training and to make sure that they are prepared and that they are prepared for the specific assignment that they are sent to. So that's also very important. It also opens a possibility for those volunteers that having had any sorts of studies, for example, related to humanitarian action, but that didn't have a chance to go to the field. And sometimes it's like a closed circle, because you have your studies, you do your postgraduate studies, etc., in humanitarian action, but you don't get to have a first chance to go to the field. There is no opportunity, because NGOs very often they require field experience. So it's like, if I don't get a first chance, I will never go. So the initiative also gives the opportunity to prepare volunteers in this specific area, and then to have an initial deployment, the first deployment, to sort of experience and learn on the job as well what humanitarian aid is all about. Another feature is the capacity building for organizations, as we said before, so the possibility for sending organizations in Europe and hosting organizations in third countries to strengthen some of the areas that might allow them actually to be certified, if it's the case, or once they are certified, to sort of strengthen some of the areas that they identify or the European Union identified that they need to strengthen. And the fourth main feature is the online networking platform, which I'm not very sure. I'm sure some of you probably have more information, more recent information than myself, as in how active is this networking platform. But anyway, as an idea, as one of the features, is a very important one, because we give the opportunity, again, maybe the volunteers, Erika and George, you can tell us if you had the chance to be part of it and if you've used it. But anyway, it gives the possibility to exchange experiences, to be in touch, to learn from other experiences, and to continue getting information. Okay. What are some of the benefits for host countries and communities? You will see, we will just look at 2 or 3 of them, for each one of them. There might be many others, and actually keep this in mind, because it's something that with experience you would be able to share what in your view are the main benefits for the different factors involved in the initiative. A couple of them for the host countries and communities, well, is the possibility of reinforcement or strengthening the capacities and resilience of vulnerable communities in these areas, particularly of disaster preparedness and risk management. And a more general, if you want, benefit is if we are successful with the initiative and if the European Union through the initiative is successful in achieving the objectives that we've seen before, then minimizing the loss of lives and damages in the event of disasters. Again, looking more in the prevention and proactive attitude rather than in the reactive one. What are some of the benefits for the civil society organizations? The availability of a well-trained, selected and ready for action network. So definitely this is the idea, is creating a European network of volunteers so that whenever a disaster strikes, or even before, as we are saying, we can sort of identify very much in a common work with our partners in different countries, what are the main areas that we need to strengthen to make sure that when the disaster strikes, we are ready for the response. So the idea is to, again, train the volunteers and have this sort of pool of volunteers that we can sort of come back at any time as needed. It builds the humanitarian response capacity as well, as we said before. And the but, organizations need to be certified. And this brought us, as those of you who participated in the course know, also some questions, as in, you know, what can be the limitations to be certified. There were some organizations saying, well, we have a lot of experience in working with volunteers. We have experience in some developing contexts, but we don't define ourselves as a humanitarian organization. So are we out of consideration for not being an organization specialized in humanitarian aid? We can come back there, but just to share or to come back as well for those of you in the course, if you remember the first response some of the colleagues came up with was the fact that the understanding and the interpretation of the European Union of what means being a humanitarian organization, first of all, is analyzed on a case-to-case case-by-case type. And on the other hand, at the same time, there is a sort of on-the-job interpretation of what the experiences of the organizations are. Because, again, it might be that you don't have a specific experience in humanitarian action, but the fact that you've worked for many years and that you have the very strong human resources management skills is definitely valuable for the initiative. So it's worth it to support you in other areas so that you can be part of the initiative. We can come back later in the debate, as I'm sure some of you have more detailed information and thoughts about it. Some of the benefits for the volunteers. Erika, you will be the one probably reflecting, and George, if you are there as well, and to tell us a little bit about this, but definitely this opportunity to get involved into humanitarian aid. As I was saying before, many people that want to get involved in humanitarian aid, they don't get a first chance to go particularly to the field. So this is a great opportunity to sort of be part of it. And another benefit for the volunteers is that it's definitely unique learning experience because it's hands-on experience, and you're pairing at the same time with professional humanitarian staff. So this is the idea that on one side you are trained before you go, but then once you are in the field, it's sort of on the job. You are learning from your coach, but you are learning from all the colleagues in the hosting organization. You might be working hand to hand with other volunteers, but you also have a team of humanitarian workers that is there with whom you will be working continuously. So that's another benefit for the individual as well. Some of the practical challenges, and the lessons learned that we will see after this slide, they are sort of withdrawn a little bit from some of the concluding documents that existed after the pilots, and sort of did a little bit of a selection of some of the key practical challenges and lessons learned that I would like you to later on come back to and tell us what's been your experience with them and why are they eventually challenges. One of them is the lack of funding for good quality needs assessment to increase the effectiveness of the volunteer and hosting organizations. In my understanding, and again, those of you being in the field, you will have more experience on this, is that the moment from the moment that we identify or develop the project between the partners to the moment that we need to mobilize the volunteers and send them to the field, the time frame is quite limited. So I'm not even very sure whether it's a lack of funding only or it's a lack of time as well. You see that you would like to have more sort of comprehensive time frame, if you want, if you will, so to make sure that the needs-based approach is exactly like that, because the needs-based approach might be limited to the project that is very much agreed between both organizations and where the intervention has to be, but then probably not so much in terms of the recruitment on the volunteer, because there is no time. And so as much as the identification of the needs on skills for the volunteer is done, later on, the volunteer that is allocated to a particular project is not necessarily, in all the cases, the perfect fit because of that lack of timing. I don't know. Again, this is a question that those of you having had the experience, I'm sure you can share more with us. Another practical challenge, or many challenges that we've seen also in human resources, the retention. Yes, we train volunteers that are professionals in the different areas back home, but then what is the possibility for those volunteers later on to be available when it's needed? The recruitment process as well, the capacity to deliver. There were some others identified, for example, the lack of cultural adaptation, but I'm not very sure if that was sort of isolated cases, and some of the organizations that participated sort of in the closure report had, and therefore they put it there, because I want to believe that probably there is an initial stage of challenging adaptation, cultural adaptation, but I want to believe that the majority of the volunteers, once they are selected and they are in the field, sooner or later they will adapt. And the quality of coaching offered to the volunteers, that was another practical challenge identified, and I would like to hear more from those of you. What is your opinion on this? Why is it that the quality of coaching is it because it's not as strong across all areas? Is it because of lack of time? Is it because of lack of experience working with volunteers, not understanding what volunteering is? What is it? Some lessons learned: the importance of involving local partners in volunteering selection and support them. Not only in the volunteering selection, but in the identification from day one of what should be the intervention, what sort of project, basically developing a roadmap together between the sending organization and the hosting organization. And of course, the volunteer selection is part of that. Another lesson learned is that the promotion of the solidarity between the citizens of Europe and the developing world is also as important as the implementation of the projects themselves. I have a question here that I would also like to ask those of you who've already been involved, which is, how do you promote, how do you see the promotion of the solidarity between Europe and the third countries, other than by the actual implementation and involvement in the initiative? How do you see that this promotion can be happening? Another element that at the beginning of the presentation I was referring to, this program is different to other volunteering programs because it focuses the skills of the volunteers needed in disaster recovery and prevention. How challenging is that? Do we have the expertise? Do we find the expertise in those areas? How good and how well developed is so far the training in those areas to make sure that the volunteers can contribute to that preparedness for those areas, which is a main priority. And another lesson learned is the importance to be agile in responding to the needs of the development world. And having, as I mentioned before, this pool of volunteers so that we can deploy them as soon as necessary once the disaster strikes. So now, coming to the end of the presentation, I would like to share with you these 3 broad questions. Some of them, again, those of you who participated in the course, we've been reflecting about them. But I would like now, having this opportunity to be here together, to share a little bit more about it. What do you think is the added value of the initiative for each one of the actors? So for you as a volunteer, Erika, for example, for you, Mathilde, as a hosting organization, but try to put yourselves also on the other scheme. What do you think is each one of you that your hosting organization might be getting from this, if you are a sending organization or a potential volunteer? The second question is, what does being a good citizen mean? And how, once you've experienced, if you've been part of the pilots, and if you see yourselves in the future getting involved in the initiative, how do you think that this being a good citizen and being an active citizen translate into practice once you've completed an assignment or you completed a project between sending and hosting organization? How does it, what does it translate itself into? And what are the challenges that the initiative poses, or you think it can pose besides those ones that we've just seen? So I'm going to stop talking now. I would like to now give the floor. Maybe we can start with you, Erika, if that's all right with you. I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your experience. Tell us in which context did you work, how long did you work there, how long was your mission for, what did you do as a volunteer, and what did you do? Something very interesting that and probably that is very much related to question number 2. I'm going to keep the questions here so that you can see them. But how did you? What did you do after you came back from the field? Okay, and how do you picture this being a good citizen? Okay, and another question that is very interesting is, okay, we've seen some of the soft skills besides your technical expertise that the European Union identifies as key and as crucial, and that I'm sure that in your training you went through in terms of what is expected from you as a volunteer. But having come back from the field, what's been those skills that have been most useful for you and for those that you were working and supporting? Okay, I'm going to mute my microphone, and Erika, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's a lot of questions. Should I start with telling a little bit what I did during my mission and a little bit of technical information. So I was deployed in Lebanon. That was from July till December 2014, around about 5 months. I was deployed in a sort of rural area of Lebanon called the IECAH Valley, at the border with Syria. And I was deployed, so my hosting organization was GVC, and sending organization was Alianza por la Solidaridad. I was mainly supporting intervention targeting Syrian refugees, so it was not preparedness, emergency preparedness, but really humanitarian aid. Most of the projects were wash interventions, so water and sanitation and hygiene. And as I'm not, I don't have specific technical expertise on water and sanitation, but I have more an education background. I was mostly involved with the restructuring of the hygiene campaign, which consisted in meetings or short training session in informal settlement where Syrian families would live. Then, as I had also some experience in project management, I also did some, a little bit of support to planning and coordination of activities, but I was mostly involved with the hygiene campaigns. Then, of course, we had communication activities, and I was really keen on that as well. We had our blog, like an article every 15 days or so, telling a little bit about experiences, our thoughts on the experience. And yes, so that was it. What was so I consider what was more challenging? So the environment was a little bit challenging. I found it a little bit challenging. For two reasons mainly. So the situation where Syrian families were living in was very, very hard. They would live, so it was a rural area, so most of them were living in tents or unfinished buildings scattered around the fields. And they would really endure poor living conditions, so lack of proper water and sanitation facilities, lack of proper cooking facilities, lack of really good job opportunities or regularly paid jobs, lack of schooling for children. And at that point, the war had already going on for 3 years, so some of the kids were not in school since 3 years. And that was really tough. And also for security restrictions, so we were staying at the border with Syria, and our mobility was restricted, and we had to evacuate a couple of times for the deterioration of security conditions. So these two were the most challenging things. So the situation in general was hard. Of course, I was not the one living the most hard situation. What did I do after? So I was involved for more or less 1 year more with GVC. But at that time, managing more actions in Syria, inside Syria. I was doing remote management, so I was staying in Beirut, but managing educational project this time directly in Aleppo, and I had local staff there and also local coordinator in Damascus. Now I finished to work with GVC in last November, and I moved to Switzerland due to like personal reasons. And here I'm trying to use more to become more of an active citizen, you know, not in the field, not doing humanitarian intervention, but more like from Europe and trying to do things from here.
Erika, if I sorry to interrupt you, if I can ask you a bit more, two things. Thank you very much. Thank you very. What a rich experience. I can imagine. I mean, I'm sure that we all have questions for you, but just maybe three questions are coming to me at the moment that we can probably, when we open the debate to everybody, we can come back to. One of them, I was asking you a little bit about the skills. What would you say that you found more useful in such a challenging environment that had helped you to cope with the situation and to be able to continue doing your job? This is one question. The other one I wanted to ask you is, with the difficulty of the context and the challenging, I wonder if, you know, because during the course that we just completed on the initiative with your colleagues, we've been discussing a lot about the humanitarian principles. And And I think your scenario is a perfect one that shows a little bit how difficult it can be, for example, to remain impartial, no, or to definitely be neutral, no, and so how, I don't know if you were exposed to the situations, and whether you had very clear indication from the organization, from GBC, in this case, the organization you were working with, on how to respond to those ones. Was there a debate within the organization on when do you need to be evacuated? What was the impact for the population that you were trying to support? Did you encounter any of those challenges? And if so, how did you go about it personally? How did you live with that?
Okay. Well, if I forget to answer some of the questions, please tell me. Because so, what kind of skills were more useful? I would say, so I would say social skills. First of all, meaning try to adapt to the context. So being able to adapt to the context, being able to relate to a variety of people. So colleagues. I don't know, colleagues from Italy, colleagues from Lebanon, colleagues from Syria, so a variety of people. Empathy, interpersonal skills. So of course, how can I relate to somebody that is a refugee living in a tent? It's really difficult. I mean, I can see, I can hear, I can talk, but it's really difficult. It's really a challenge. How can I relate? And just, just listen what they have to say, trying to how can I say, try to incorporate their comments in possible future intervention, and really listen. Intercultural skill, but this is kind of connected to the two other, of course, being intercultural, the environment where I was living in. And also, I would say, learning skills. So being able as much as possible to learn and reflect daily on what was going on. Regarding the situation, like security situation, what can I say? Well, it was difficult. It had some kind of impact on the project, but not very much, I would say, because it was a short-term evacuation. It was like a few days only, and so our work didn't really got interrupted. How to deal with that? Well, I don't know. It was scaring at some point. Just trying to remain calm, because at some point you're also with other people, and everybody's a little bit scared. So of course you don't want to mount on that and really freak out. And then you asked me another question, but now I think I forgot.
Thank you, Erika. Thank you, Erika, very much. I think you know what, we can leave it for here for now. Keep thinking about it, because I know these are not sort of simple questions just to answer without thinking yourself very much. Keep thinking a little bit about it, because we might want to come back to that. That some of the ethical dilemmas or the situations that you went through later on. What we are going to do is we are going to give the floor now. I think maybe to Mathilde. If Mathilde, when we open the debate, we will come back to some of these issues if the participants are interested. Erika. Okay. I would like to know if we have Mathilde. Mathilde from Colombia. Are you here?
Hello. Yes, I'm here. Good morning. Hello. Good morning in Colombia.
Good morning, Mathilde. Okay, so if it's okay with you, please also introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit as a host organization. In which project were you involved with the initiative as a host organization? And how much were you as host organization involved in the identification of the needs, both in terms of interventions, projects, and the selection of the volunteers? And also, if we look into the three sort of general questions that we have on the slide, try to think about the main challenges. What main challenges did you have to face in that process? Is that okay?
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I'm working in Colombia in Alianza por la Solidaridad. We had the pilot 1.5 years ago. So, I mean, I think it was a very good experience. We learned a lot because I'm going to try to. We have a lot of projects, and it comes from humanitarian aid to recovery and development. You know, we work in the different steps. We are here in Colombia in a long and complex crisis, so for sure, are in humanitarian projects, but it's also linking, a link, you know. Well, what I think is what we did, and what I think is also one of the most challenge we have. We did it, but I think we still have part to improve. Is like the first step of everything, like the preparation. To know exactly the skills of volunteer people, to do the selection, to choose the right people, in order that they could adapt as soon as possible. Because as you know, the time is not very, very long. And what we try is that this experience would be good for the volunteer and also for the organization. It means that all the dynamics, all the work we are doing, the people who are coming could get involved as soon as possible, and they could learn, and also they could give things here, or they could accord. Sorry for my English, I didn't speak for a long time in English. What does it mean? This means that in the other time we actively participate in all the selection. We all together with our partners in Europe, with the different organizations. We think this was very, very, very useful. We have also, what I was saying, a challenge, thinking that we, in our organization, we are like always like running, you know, with many things, with many projects. And I think it's really important to stop, to prepare this well, very well, because this means that if you don't prepare this carefully, I'm sorry, Sandra Victoria is telling me that you cannot listen to me. Okay, is it now better?
Yes, we can. At least I can hear you very well, Mathilde.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. So this means that sometimes you are like in a hurry and you don't dedicate the how do you say, enough time to choose carefully the, let's say, the skill, no, the perfiles. Sorry, I don't know the name in English. Like the which is the type of volunteer.
The profile, Mathilde.
Mm-hmm. The profile of the person. No, we had. I have to say that this was really, I think, very well last time. We worked very closely with all the European organizations. We spent time with them doing the interviews first, doing the profile, no, preparing the profiles, later on making the interviews, etc. But I think, as I was saying, that we have also a bit more to another step, no, like a bit of space to improve. Because the challenge is also the adaptation. We have problems of security in the places, so it's very important the type of people here. We also have two types of volunteers. We have the individual, I mean, people, the young people coming here, and also we had a corporative. This was the first time, corporative volunteers. I have to say that both were very, very, very good experience. Let's say the single volunteers, so I don't know how to mention it. They involved in different parts. We had a I think this was good. All the preparedness in Europe before the courses they had. We could see, because we receive from time to time another type of volunteers, and I think you can see the difference. The one who came with no preparation at all, let's say only just an interview, I don't know, a chat through the Skype or wherever, and these people who came passing all through this process. Also, the corporative volunteer, I think, is another good opportunity, because we are talking about people who are working for a long time in companies that have, like, let's say, like their own lives made in Europe. And on one side, on one hand, this is good because the experience they can give us, this could be the most in like, let's say, internal management works in our organization. And we were at that moment doing a restructuration in many areas, administration area, and it's really useful to work with these people that work very close with us, checking what we were doing, giving some advices, etc. Now, can you listen to me? I'm trying to do my best to go very near, but they are telling me that it's you listen to me very, very low. So this was a good experience, I think, because it was very well prepared people working for a long time in companies. So they knew very much about all these areas, human resources, administrative, and it was in a very good moment, because, as I was telling you, we were like in an internal restructuration. So this was the part for us, the value that they gave to us. I think for them, as I'm telling you, they are people that they have like their life done. People with a long career, etc. So the knowing of the country, knowing different situations, what's happening in Colombia. I think this is linking what you were asking before, like what is to be a good citizen, no? But knowing how people are suffering in other places, that not everything is like in Europe. I think this was a good learning for all of them, and also we have been in touch with some of them, and I think it has, I cannot say in 15 days that everything is going to change, but I think some touch in their sensibility. I think this is also because I'm trying to distinguish, the corporative volunteers that mostly are not very young people. I'm telling you, people with their career. On the other hand, is the individual volunteers that they come. Many of them are having a good opportunity. They come with a lot of interest. Many times it's easier for them to adapt because they come like very open-minded, So well, in general, I think it's for both. But what I'm telling you is so important, the preparation. I think this is the key for that, in order that everything goes well. Because if you don't prepare this, okay, you can have the profile that you didn't need. So this means that for our organization, it's not going to give any added value. But for them, it's not going to be good because they are not going to be in the place they wanted, or they are not going to feel comfortable. So I think in this pilot, I think this was very good. But also, I think we have to go a bit step more in order to strengthen that.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mathilde. That was a very thorough, I think, explanation, and I think it gives us a very much of a very clear idea of where the strengths are, some of the strengths of the initiative, and what the value can be for the volunteers as well as for the organization. We'll come back to you. Okay, but let's listen now to Maria Chiara from GVC Italy, who's today here with us as a sending organization. So I think, Maria, the questions to you are similar to the ones to Mathilde. From your role as sending organization, what's been your experiences? What are the challenges? What is the added value for you as a sending organization having participated in the initiative? How do you see it?
Hi everybody. Can you hear me? I hope so.
Yes, very well. Maria,
okay.
Go ahead.
Great. Yes, well, I work with GVC, which is an Italian NGO based in Bologna. So we were involved since the pilot phase with the Alianza per la Solidaridad. So about the added value, apart from what Cristina, you have already said, I think that for us, this initiative, this program in general, it is a very good opportunity to create a direct bridge between Europe and southern countries. Also, compared to other European programs, I think that this really focuses on create and strengthen this link among Europe and southern countries. And as Cristina, you already said, it's an opportunity for many types of organizations. So sending, hosting, but regarding sending, many European organizations can apply according to their own experience. Training experience, human resources, humanitarian aid, volunteering. So it's real. The very important, the key element is the exchange of practices. I think it's a strengthening of European network that really also exchange opportunities among the European members, as sending. I'm speaking as sending organization. And it's a very good opportunity to also to strengthen the staff capacities, of course, at local level, but also the European organization has this added value to have the opportunity to increase capacities, organization. Yes, like the skills of staff in several sectors. So I mean, it's a complete and of course I think that the link, you know, with also the direct link with European citizens. I mean. As we are speaking about volunteers, European volunteers, so organizations really enter into contact with people, with citizens, and I think, I mean, this is a very important aspect as well. And then another important thing, for example, is that with the certification to become a sending organization, you have also the chance to revise your organizational standards. I think that the requirements are quite high, so you have this opportunity to really check and adapt to the requirements, but I mean it's a way to come back to how the organization works and what can be improved. So I mean I think it's very useful. And well, another thing is that I think that the communication with the donors is quite smooth and fluent. As the program started just 1 year ago, the agency really is asking European organization the support and tips to better implement this initiative. So I mean it's not taken for granted that there is this fluent dialogue among donors and the European organizations. Well, I speak about the challenges. I think that the most important one is timing for me. It's timing because we are speaking about humanitarian aid. So when you write a project, then you can implement it after several months. And if you consider that then volunteers have to be selected, trained, coached, so a lot of time passes from the writing of the proposals and the real deployment of volunteers. So sometimes it's quite difficult to, I mean, it's very important, the flexibility, and because sometimes we also had to readapt the profiles, for example, according also to the security situation of some countries. So I mean, I think that this is it's a real challenge. And well, another one is about certification, for example, but it's more for, I think, local hosting organization, because the forms are in English and partly in French. So for me, if the program is involving hosting organization, I mean, more languages should be available for the forms for certification. So at least in Spanish and Portuguese, for example. And about what is a good citizen, I think that some of the volunteers really were really active and really catch the soul of this of the program, because once they got back, I mean, for me the important thing is that well, the motivation to like keep speaking about the experience in the field. So talk with people, like involve completely our own environment, about, I don't know, schools or friends or parents. I mean, it's a really 360 degrees involvement of our life. So not only future work, but also yes, like live life, taking this experience always like daily with us. So yes, I think this.
Thank you very much, Maria. Very interesting, and again very comprehensive. Cassia wrote here a comment. I'm not very sure if it's a question to you or is sort of information. Cassia, do you want to tell us?
No, it was just a comment, following Chiara's intervention, just like this news that she was talking about the translations of the forms of how to facilitate the process of accreditation for the hosting organizations. I was just saying that this and this also links to the comment on the communication with the agency, with the donor. It's like they are really open for all the recommendations, so they are taking it into account. So that was just a comment.
Okay. Thank you for the comment. Maybe we can open now a little bit the floor to everybody, to all of us, and to see if there is any questions to either Erika, Mathilde, Maria, myself. I don't know if you want to raise any questions or you want to make any comments, or even throw yourselves to the pool, as we say, and try to answer the 3 questions that we have here from the point of view. So I leave the door open. Maybe you can raise your hand. If you remember, Camille explained to you at the beginning, you have a little open hand on under the names of the users. And if you want to raise it, I will sort of give you the floor and you can discuss. Okay? Let's go. Don't try to participate all at the same time, because we can't. It's impossible. Does anybody have any question for the participants, for the presenters?
Maybe just in the meantime, just one comment.
Okay, go ahead, Erika. Go.
Kasia here. So I just wanted to say, because there was also another volunteer who was about to join us today, but when she was deployed to Uganda during the pilot phase, unfortunately she couldn't join us because of some agenda crossing issues. But she also recorded the video for us, so this would be for you. For later on, maybe just also to have some ideas. Now she's based in South Sudan, and she really wanted to share with you her reflections. So I just invite you to have a look and listen to her after our session. And maybe just a quick comment in the meantime, if you don't have other hands raised right now. I see that there is a recording, so I will speak later.
Hello? Am I? No. Can you hear me? No.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a comment, and then Claudia, please feel free to go on what Maria Chiara was saying, on how important it is after the deployment. To tell about the experience, or to be involved also in post-deployment activities, or just simply tell the experience to people that are around you. So, for example, I was deployed in 2014, so of course there was some debate already about refugees here in Europe, but it was not very strong. Like it is now, for example, that is like really a daily, there are daily inputs like from media and social media. And I was very surprised that as I was talking to my parents or my close relatives, close friends, they didn't really know so much about what was going on, and as I didn't know actually before being deployed. And that was very important because, it's just about spreading information, or have the patience to sit and talk to people, and I think this is very important. But I think also that communication activities are actually a very important part of the deployment. Through blogs or other social media, I think volunteers can really do something if they get proper training, and that's very important. Which should be a very important part of the training. In my opinion, and also if there is some good communication could also with, for example, the communication office of the NGO sending and hosting, so that, you know, like some directions can be given to the volunteer, who may not be like very much expert in communication things. Yeah, I think this is very important for the active citizenship part of the whole program.
Very useful, Erika, the advice. Thank you very much. And in fact, I wanted to ask you another question, which is in a way related to the communication, but to the communication with the community more. How do you think, well, in your case, you were working mainly with forced migrants or with refugees, and how do you think they perceived you as a volunteer vis-a-vis the staff? If you want, the humanitarian staff that was working with them. Was there any differentiation made? Did you feel that was really important? No, you were really working hand to hand with the rest of the team, and they didn't even know that you were a volunteer. How relevant was that for you?
No, so refugees and beneficiaries in general didn't know I was a volunteer. Local staff did, and we had, I think, very good exchange of information, experiences, practices, international, of course, also international stuff, but the beneficiaries themselves did not know that I was a volunteer. Also because actually the time on the field was kind of strictly regulated. We couldn't really go and spend there a lot of time for the working schedule, also for security reasons. So not a big. Also, you know, I don't speak Arabic, so there was some language barrier. So I would work mainly with the help of my colleague, and so no differentiation was made on the field.
Okay, thank you. I see some smiles here, but I don't see any hands up. So I'm going to ask another question, but you feel absolutely free to stop me anytime, okay? Because I rather you participating and sort of raising your questions or ideas rather than me talking. But in the meantime, I would like to ask Maria Chiara and also Mathilde a question. In a video that we looked at during the course, in which we have George, one of the volunteers that unfortunately couldn't join us today, talking with CIMA Research Foundation, which was the sending organization that he worked with, and the hosting organization in Grenada, which is the country where he worked. And the sending organization at some point mentions that is quite relevant to think about sustainability. The sustainability of the projects and the sustainability of the work that volunteers get involved in, considering that these projects are short-term. But when I listen to that, I question myself, you know, when the word sustainability, particularly the donor community, as many of you, I'm sure you know, is the big word. You know, they want sustainability because funding is limited, and also because we don't want to create that dependency among communities and countries, if you will. The idea is to try to sort of, you know, bring those resources in terms of human resources, this know-how, these learning experiences, and then leave that there. But in what areas do you think that this can be realistically achieved to achieve sustainability, or to think about sustainability with the initiative? It's a question to any of you. Erika, if you have some thoughts about it, also feel free. But because the question of sustainability was raised by a sending organization, I sort of throw the question a little bit to Maria and Mathilde, if you want to answer. Thank you.
Well, for me, can you hear me? Yes? It's Maria Chiara. Can you hear me? Okay.
Sí, Maria, we hear you, yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
For me, I mean, this project, this program has there are like two lots. One is deployment of volunteers, and the other one is technical assistance and capacity building. And for me, for example, one of the main aspects or activity that can be sustainability in itself is capacity building, because it's this is for not only for European organization, but it's also for local organizations, for community. I mean, there is a specific lot that is dedicated to this. And for me, I mean, training can be one of the main aspects of sustainability, because the skills can be transferred from the volunteer to local communities, from communities to the local volunteer. So I mean, it's a very diagonal way to involve different actors.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Mathilde, do you want to add anything?
Yes. No, I would like to say that when a volunteer comes to our organization, I think the most important thing is not to invent something different you are doing. I mean, let's say they are going to contribute with something, but something that is inside the strategy of the organization. Let's say our strategy is vinculated in order to how do you say, the way out, it's okay in order to give a sustainability for the process. And this means that when you are involving this person that is coming, this volunteer, he should do something else. I mean, let's say like an expense, but inside the strategy. It's not something new, completely invented outside. That when, for example, when Maria was, Chiara was talking about the capacity building, we have all the process here in our organizations about creating resilience, etc. So volunteers should involve this part. It's not. I think when you involve them in the strategy and in all the things that the organization is doing, I think this is assuring the sustainability. Nothing that they are coming and they leave and this is forgotten and later on you leave it like in a carpet there and you forget it. It has to be engaged completely in all the work you are doing.
Thank you, Mathilde. So in a way you would say that, I mean, you can look at the initiative as an opportunity in two ways, no? In a way, it can be, if you want, sort of one of the steps or one of the tools, if you want, that you can use as part of your strategy, and you can make the best of it, as you said, no? To continue implementing your strategy and trying to work through your objectives. Or you can start, because I mean, in your case, for example, that you have strong partnerships already, and you've been working for a long time there in Colombia. But there might be also other organizations that start, if you want, in a way, probably not from scratch, but just from scratch in humanitarian aid, for example, and start from the first time a new partnership with a new organization. And in this case, although I understand it, of course, has to be, as we say, a roadmap that is developed together, etc. But probably it's not so much sort of a tool that you would use within your strategy, but sort of more of an independent thing, isn't it?
It's me, because it was broken a bit and I couldn't listen completely. Yes, this is what I was trying to say. It's nothing that you have to create completely new apart from what you are doing. It's something else that you use to strengthen your strategy. That's why I think it's so important, the voluntary people, because they come to how do you say, yeah, to strengthen the work we are doing here. But what is difficult, and we have found in some cases this thing, no, that they are going to come with very good intentions, everything, but sometimes they have like a good, no, I would like to do this completely different outside, and yeah, this could be a very good idea, but this is not what we are doing, and what we are trying is completely apart, and this is very, very difficult to give it sustainability. That's why you should work, and you should create. That's why I was telling you before the importance of the preparedness, of the first step, not to prepare everything, in order that you don't start developing new things completely apart from what you are going to be able to continue doing. It's a good opportunity to maybe to improve something new, but inside your strategy.
Very good. Thank you, Mathilde, for that. I don't know, another question that I was thinking about is, and again, it's probably more a question for sending and hosting organization, again, for Mathilde and Maria. Would you say that the initiative, so the European Union Aid Volunteers initiative is more demanding in terms of preparation, etc., than other volunteering projects or initiatives that you are currently conducting or that you've worked with in the past?
Maria,
sorry, go on.
It's what I was saying at the beginning. I think, yeah, it's much more, it demands more preparation. Is what I'm telling you, that it's a challenge for us, because it's not only, okay, send me 5 people that when they are here, I will start working with them. I talk to them a couple of times and explain them how it is. And it's a bit demanding because, as I was telling you before, we are very busy. We are always busy. This is the problem. So many times you have to say, no, stop. I'm going to dedicate the time that it needs in order that it could be successful. Yes. And this demanded because it's a long preparation. It takes some months. It takes a lot of discussions with the organizations in Europe. It takes like all the courses. What I was telling you before is that I think we could improve a bit more. It was a pilot, and I think we learned a lot of things. Like the idea is good, and it demands much more than others. But this helps you to give you much more success.
Okay.
Just to say that, yes, maybe, I mean, if it's demanding, I mean, I think it's a good thing, just because we are dealing with people. So we are sending people in countries where sometimes, as it happens to Erika, situations are not so. There are some security strengths, so maybe it's challenging, maybe for some organizations, maybe the smallest one, the newest one. But I think that there is a reason why behind.
Okay, thank you very much to both. I had many questions, and as I listened to you, some others come back in terms of the implementation. But I suppose we need, if there is no, I don't see any more hands up here. I think we might need to sort of start finishing the webinar, because we were supposed to go for an hour and we've been already an hour and a half. I maybe just wanted to sort of highlight a couple of points that Maria, Mathilde, and Erika, you have mentioned, which I think are very, very important for the initiative. It really looks like this is a great opportunity. It's something that is happening, it's something that has been worked over 6 years by the European Union, actors, not only the European Commission, but all the civil society organizations, etc. So it's something that is definitely happening. There is a clear need identified there. And it is also a great opportunity for all those involved. But two main issues that, or main elements that I would like to highlight is the preparation element, as Mathilde insisted, that is absolutely key, the preparation, the communication between both organizations, to make sure that the projects are not isolated, that really it happens because there is a need, and this need is identified, is well developed, that there is an opportunity, a great opportunity for both organizations, those in Europe and those in the host countries, to be strengthened and to develop further partnerships for the future. And another very important element that Erika mentioned in terms of sensitization, to give an opportunity to European citizens to be sensible to third countries' situations. And I think actually, Erika, your example and your experience is crucial in that. You see, we are seeing over the past year the so-called, between brackets, refugee crisis that everybody talks about, but there is a lot of myths and a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of miscommunication and misinformation going there. So I'm sure there is a big role to play in that in terms of sensitizing, and I'm sure Erika is part of the work or part of your involvement at the moment as a citizen in Switzerland, other than other things that you might be doing. So again, as I said, I think could continue for hours and sitting. I could imagine all of us sitting around the table and discussing about it, but we will close here. For me, again, I think it's been a pleasure to have the opportunity to see many of your names and to listen to some of you today. Thank you very much to our guests, to Erika, Maria, Mathilde. Thank you very much for having joined us and brought a little bit the reality of what the initiative is. And from my side, all my encouragement. I think this is really an opportunity. Myself, having been in the field for many years, is something that I would have liked to see for many years as well. And particularly this opportunity for preparedness and support the communities is a great one. So thank you very much. Thank you.